Hello, this is Susan Cousino. This is the Zoom call number 7, pardon me, for the OSU PDC-PRO. The next upcoming lesson is due April 24th, and it is lesson 7. Hi, Emily.
Hi, how are you?
Oh, good. I'm good. I wasn't sure if you could hear me. My headphones keep doing this like disconnection thing, and they're not actually disconnected. So,
yeah, I can hear you.
Good. How are you doing?
I'm doing all right. I got behind after spring break and was just confused and had a lot of stuff going on personally. So I did turn in lesson 6 just the other day. So sorry about that. And I hope that I might still be able to get some credit for it.
Oh, it's fine. This is the funny thing with like adult learning is like, I mean, there's deadlines basically, so that, like, to make sure everybody like stays up with the course and everything, but there's really like, don't tell anybody, but there's no late penalty, so you'll still get full credit. It just takes me longer to catch up. So you'll still get like credit, like I'll mark it just as if you'd handed it in on the day. It's just that like my timing, my schedule, and also, you know, with kid and farm and all the things. Oh, here's Spradley. You know, my marking day is set as Monday or Tuesday, depending how our childcare works out.
Right.
So if you don't get it in by those days, then it's like Thursday, Friday, or it might even fold over to the next Monday, which kind of makes it can kind of put you back if you're waiting for that feedback.
Okay.
But there's no big penalty for handing in late. It just gets really hard. Like it gets harder and harder to catch up. For you as a student to catch up.
Yeah.
Because everything's cumulative. And then just selfishly from my end, it's harder and harder for me to go back and catch up on marking, because I'm like, okay, I'm in, you know, marking lesson 7 mode.
Totally understand.
Lesson 5. Yeah. So.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much. I'm glad that that I'm not as far behind as I thought I was.
Yeah.
So, it happens, but I appreciate your understanding. So.
Yeah. No. Yeah. It definitely happens, and it's not a big deal. Like it's when you fall behind, like get like 3 and 4 lessons behind, and then I'm like, you're going to want to catch up fast or think about re-enrolling, you know, because it just snowballs, right? So yeah. Good morning, everyone. Mark, Bradley.
Morning.
I've got so many tabs in Windows open. Okay. So did anybody coming in today have any specific questions? I don't have anything in the document. Or you just coming to see what comes up, because stuff always comes up.
Yeah, just seeing what comes up. I'm still behind on last assignment that I'm finishing up this week, so I haven't really dug into this assignment other than some of the videos. So just.
Do you need any help on this, like on the soil assignment?
I don't think so. I haven't been able to get up there to do. I need to redo the soil test. I didn't see in our resources it showed you how to do the soil test, so I was just kind of like running blind.
Oh,
assignment tab. I was thinking it'd be in the document, so it wasn't in there, and so I was just like, oh, I guess I'll just YouTube it, and so I just kind of messed up a few times.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Later in the week, I was like, oh, there's the exact explanation on how to do everything.
Gotcha. Okay.
I also was looking for a tutorial in the slides for the test that they were looking for. So that might be a good note for the next one, is to put those links inside there. I just YouTube them or things like that and found local extensions of people doing ribbon tests or jar tests or things like that. And then, did about my version of that.
Okay. Yeah, that's fine. And those are pretty standard, so that's fine. I've got a student instructor feedback form here. So that's going to go, that'll be week 6. So link to tutorial for soil tests. And Dow is really good actually about checking these feedback forms. And I've so far it looks like I don't know if everybody else is just emailing her, but so far I'm the only instructor that actually has used this form for submitting feedback. So I did email her and be like, hey, make sure that you do check this. So I'll make sure that gets in. Okay. But whether you YouTubed it or you found the instructions in the course, that's going okay. Some resources. Oh yeah, so if you're ever looking for tutorials that you're thinking should be there and don't seem to be, yeah, it's in that. It's very likely to be in the discussion in the like assignment resources in the header in that discussion forum.
Yeah, I found it there after I did it.
Yeah.
I didn't think to look there on that front.
Okay. I didn't see any emails either. You're always welcome to email me.
Yeah, spring break, I took a lot of time off, and so I was rushing really towards the end. And I threw my whole schedule off because I thought the office hours was last week. So I'm glad to be back on schedule.
Yeah, me too. I know it threw me off too, actually, because I had forgotten that we have a 2-week break, and then we had a break for our preschool, and it was just like felt like I was just sort of Tetrising breaks and schedules and things. So yeah. Okay. So no specific questions. Have you guys, who's looked into, maybe it's not even worth asking, but I can say if you've looked into the next assignment, like the lesson 7, the local ecology survey. I've got a few notes that I put into the Google Doc.
That's what we should be on, right? That's lesson 7 is starting at 14, the local ecology survey.
Yes, so submitting lesson 7 next Monday. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So I'm going to drop it into the chat in case you don't have the link to the Google Doc anymore, or whatever it got. But I want to do a share screen because this is one that I get a lot of questions on, and I see it kind of tripping up students. And like the last cohort was like, we put so much work into this and it's only worth 4 points. I don't know if you've noticed if you guys have noticed the pattern, but in most, if not all of the assignments, like in the lessons, there's like one section that's kind of like a bunch of information, kind of generalized background information, and it's worth like 4 points. And then there's another section where it's like you're actually doing the work, and that's anywhere from like another, say like 10 to 18 points, depending how big the assignment is. So this coming up one, this local ecology survey is one that people are like, wow, I put so much work into it and it's only worth 4 points. It's like, yeah. So I want to show you guys a few ways that you can kind of make that a little bit easier for yourselves, I hope. Now, can you see the ecology, like the local ecology survey up on your screens now? I just did a share screen.
Yes.
Okay, great. So this is the slide that I'm just going to say almost everybody fights with. And they're like, it doesn't look like that. This is weird. And this is almost more like a rainforest sort of succession illustration. Like I've seen this happen in the tropics where you've gone from like very tilled or like badly overgrazed bare soil, some grass starts growing up, you start getting more shrubs, little taller trees, you got some emergent trees, and then you've got like a full-on forest. And like even the scale of these is like, yeah, those are almost like tropical sized trees. So the illustration itself is a little bit deceiving. And because I know a lot of you, And like my students in general, because most of you are from California, or like at least the Western US, you don't necessarily have this forest succession model. So really look to your examples. Like I think this is a really good one for a lot of you, actually, where you've got the semi-arid desert climax community, where you're moving like from a certain community into another community, and then into like, you're doing this early, mid, late succession. Focus on the native species that you'd ideally be seeing, because otherwise everybody, it'll just all be like that European oatgrass, foxtail, a mustard of some, probably black mustard. Like you're all good. It's just going to be like the same, like dominant invasive plants. So try and dig in and see what like your early successional like native plants would be. Even though in a lot of disturbed sites, those early successionals are often going to be invasive. See if you can pick up something on the natives. So I think I like the layout of these two slides. So there's this one, and then there's this one, which is, again, is another forest model, but it's, you know, it's another example of how you can lay this out, get a little bit more information. I personally find these two slides a lot clearer than this one. Now, if you like this first slide and you want to go with that, you're totally welcome to. And a lot of students, I would actually say most students do, but it seems to cause more consternation and more fights and more like confused questions than I think it's worth. And because this whole section, this whole local ecology survey is worth 4 points, I don't want anybody getting hung up on it, because the cross section is, you know, it's a little more, it's more technical and it's more important. So again, like really go to the examples. I think this is a really nice one. There's an overview of the base map. This is the line where the cross section goes. Talk a little bit about why you chose that particular cross section. And it's arbitrary. You could, I mean, it's arbitrary within reason, right? I mean, this person could have quite reasonably done a good cross section, like from this point, say across to, you know, like this, the utility pole here, and given this roof line and something about this bank, if that was going to be like relevant to their design work. Could have done a long axis, like right along the ridge. Like there's a bunch of different ways, like areas that you can lay out a cross section, and it's really just choose one that is going to you can tell an interesting story about your, you know, why you would do it, what you might have an idea of what you want to do with those areas, or why they're like particularly relevant to your site design. Go through that exercise, and then just, you know, if you have time and you want to, you're welcome to do a second cross section, but don't get hung up on like, did I get the right cross section, or should I put it somewhere else? It's picking one that's got enough reasons to justify doing a cross section there, and then doing that information, like getting the like the site diagram, and which is going to look something like that, you know, making sure that's clear, get your images in. And you know, filling that all out, and not worrying too much about like, did I pick the right cross section? Because I also see students get a little bit hung up on that too, of like, you know, whether they, you know, should I pick this one or that one? It really doesn't matter. It's in the exercise of doing it that there's the value. So, but this is a good area to really look at these cross sections and figure out like what you like. There's a lot of pieces here about like laying out the microclimates on the diagram. So all of these have points attached to them. So go to the discussion and see, like, you know, go through the rubric and see like, okay, did I get, you know, the gutter, like roof and gutter heights? Did I get tree heights? Do I have a scale? Do I have the microclimates? Like, be like kind of as methodical as you're inclined as you can be about making sure you hit those individual pieces. So does that, yeah, are there any questions on that? Because this is one section I do see trip up a lot of students, and I was like, I'm hoping I can head some of that off at the pass before you get too into it. But.
I have a quick question.
Sure.
When you mentioned you know, sort of what compelling question you might ask about your site. Mm-hmm. I mean, I keep thinking that I'm only asking the obvious questions about water flow, water catchment, especially when looking at the cross section. Water flow, water catchment, maybe like solar aperture, like microclimates. But are there other, in your experience, have there been other kind of compelling questions that have been raised or highlighted through this exercise?
We start there because those are going to generally highlight the biggest, most important questions. So coming from like the scale of permanence, like water, geography, like understanding where your water's going is fundamental to getting a good design. It's not only, the most obvious because it's also one of the key ones, most important. Another one that I would say can come out here is like visual lines and traffic lines. So either like there's a footpath, that's of some sort of importance. Sometimes it's a public access way or an easement. And then like sight lines. So like you're like, oh, I didn't really realize like you're kind of on like the same level as like a neighbor's property, or like you see that from a different angle or something. So those would be the two that I could think of off the top of my head that might pop out a little bit more in this. And then also just seeing more clearly like how like a slope on either side of a ridge might interact, or that you can do something there. But yeah, I mean, really the water is the big one, and then understanding how those slopes are going to interact with like what you personally want to do on your site. That's a great question though.
If we feel like, so kind of sticking with what the way I've been designing so far in the course, I was thinking I would hand draw the section as well. Mm-hmm. And I'm wondering if an elevation might serve me a little bit better than a section, just because my cross section is going to be, since it's a smaller site, the cross section is going to be sort of smaller. Mm-hmm. So the way I've showed that in the past is just by different line weights. Is that still okay, or should I just stick to a plain cross strip section?
So different, can you explain that, what you mean by using different line weights?
Sure, just like
I mean, I understand the idea. Oh, okay.
Yeah, so just basically the things that are on the line, making sure that they're nice and bold and like it's obvious, and then having, if I'm going to do the elevation, anything that's back from the line but still within view. Like for example, I'm thinking like a big part of our property is the wall, and I'm thinking about doing a cross section that sort of shows the parts of the wall that are most that will serve us to cultivate against, and so I'm wondering if doing an elevation might make more sense than just doing a standard section.
I would love to see an example.
Sure.
And I mean, not like, oh, make me an example before. I mean, I'm open to see it. In general, I say like, just kind of like, because this course is geared towards like training professionals, then I'd like to see like still, oh, you can do a cross section, yeah, you can do it. And I believe you that you can do it because I've seen your work, right? I'm really curious to see what you're talking about, because I don't have an easy visual in my head because I haven't seen that sort of a graphic depiction of it. But,
sure. It usually just kind of looks exactly like a section, but then you have some background elements so that that they're close, but they're not on the line.
I would be okay with that.
Okay. Okay.
And having some context too helps, right? So I'm not gonna be like, oh, she didn't, she totally did misunderstood this assignment. It's different when you've asked about it beforehand. So I would say go for it. Yeah, as long as you've covered those elements of like the cross section, or like make a note or something where if you're really going to deviate from it. But I would actually, it's funny, I think your cohort has probably deviated from the templates more than any other group. I don't know what was in the air, and it's been fine. It's been really interesting, and some of them like have worked really well. But I would say go for it, and yeah, just like try and cover as many of those elements as you can.
Okay.
I make a note. Yeah, I'd be happy to see it.
Cool. And if we cross through a building, you have no interest in seeing interiors or anything like that?
No.
Great.
I don't know. Someone might. I'm not like a zone zero designer sort of. I like yeah, that's somebody else's. I mean, and I get the principle of like designing the interior but I know that's fine.
Okay, great. Thanks.
Yeah. Life's too short.
Susan, I have a quick question. I did some cross sections earlier as a part of the sector analysis. I think for some reason maybe I saw one of Andrew's videos that was placed in that. Anyway, I don't know why I did it when I did it, but I did. Is it okay if I
see.
Yeah. Is that sort of sufficient for this point, or is there something else like?
Oh, I see. Yeah.
Not to make this about me. Yeah.
No, that's fine. That's fine. There's some things missing.
Yeah.
Like I would say, like the microclimates need to be really clear.
Okay.
I'd like to see a vertical scale. I mean, you've got like a max and min elevation, but I'd like to see, and the heights of the trees.
Yeah.
Height of the balcony, that sort of thing, or whichever, if you wanted to use both or one or the other.
Okay.
But yeah, make sure these would be fine.
Okay.
This first one that shows like, and maybe Victoria, tell me if this is kind of what you mean.
Because this is front and back. There's things happening in the front and the back, Victoria.
Right.
Yeah. So I mean, traditionally, and this is just from like the couple of courses I've taken, typically an elevation will start at your cross section, and then you just see everything that's behind the cross section.
Yeah.
This has like that foreground and background element, which is really cool, but is sort of more of like in the rendering sort of space.
Mm-hmm.
But it's still like giving you a lot of information clearly, and it shows, like I look at that and I can tell what your foreground, middle ground, and background is. So I think it's still really, really useful. But in kind of what I'm talking about in terms of elevation, an elevation line is basically just your section line with then background elements that are purposely faded so that you know that they're not exactly on the line, but they can affect the line. Yes. As I understand it.
Yeah, I'd be okay with you pulling these forward and then doing whatever modifications or additions you need to do for, I would say for the assignment up to the point that you're like, yeah, okay, I'll sacrifice those points. I'm not going to like do that particular, whatever. I mean, that's your, that's your discretion.
That makes sense.
But
thank you.
This one to me looks like an elevation because I can tell like what's on your line and what's behind your line.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay. Nice. And then Mark and Emily, I had you two specifically in mind when I made some of the comments in the document about if you don't have much, you don't have much. Like if you don't have a roof line to work with, you could either put in, the height that you modeled for the water exercise, if you want to like do a fictitious building, if there's any tree, like Emily, I know you've got a few trees, right? That's right?
Yeah.
In the pocket. Yeah. So if you wanted to model like that grove, like maybe where you wanted to lay out a first building site or something, that would be fine.
Okay.
Whatever is meaningful to you. I mean, Mark, you could probably put a line through your pond to show something, tell an interesting story there. So
good.
Okay, yeah.
Go ahead.
Would you prefer that there is a mock building? Or just
If there
kind
was
of
not-
whatever makes
if-
sense.
If there was nothing else, then I guess yes. Just I think it would be good practice.
Okay.
But don't, yeah, I mean, don't take that as like, oh, I've got to put in a building because she would prefer, like, do what makes sense to you. And that like for me, design work and creating a client report is really like futuristic storytelling. It's like, you have this land, this is where it's at. We could take it in this direction, and this is what it could look like. And then often there's like a big sticker price, or there's like time and resources in between, like in kind of in the way between, hey, this is where you're at, this is where you could get to. But telling that story helps to get you there. And you know, if it helps get the client to the point that they're like, oh, okay, well, we're going to find the resources because we want to make this. Telling that story along the way is what kind of makes that happen. So that's the way I look at these, is like, you're creating a possible future for what, you know, based on what's there currently. Yeah.
That's a really helpful point. Thank you for that.
Okay.
In my case, I kind of want to do the opposite, where the house and the buildings are, it's kind of already finished, and I want to propose what it looks like in the unused land on the cross section. Okay. I probably have some storage, some water storage, maybe facilities for animals or something like that I could maybe mock into there, but I'd actually prefer to omit the buildings in mine because they don't really fit the spaces right now, and some of them may even need like remediation. The dude did like auto work, and I find oil filters when it rains in some of these areas, so it's not, I don't have any plans to use things in that area just yet. But from a more developmental standpoint, I plan to probably do more in that area because everything else is kind of established here. So what do you think would be a suggestion?
Just to clarify, are you talking about mapping the area where there's currently nothing?
Right. So
okay.
Yeah, I've got like a water easement that goes through it and some things that, you know, would make good points, but really just kind of showing that slope. It's vineyard and house on one side, and I don't really plan to do much in that center cross. So if I bring the section over to, you know, the pasture land, there's, I guess, more potential for development.
Right. I'd be fine with that. Yeah. I mean, if you're showing like, you know, if you're planning to put in water tanks or irrigation or anything, or, you know, shelters, fencing, any of that would be fine. Yeah, show me what you got. I guess I would say, like, generally I stick to, you know, I generally stick to like what's already there. But yeah, it's kind of the opposite issue. It's like, if in your case, if you're just make it clear. Just make it clear what you're doing. If you're saying like, I want to model this because I want to show like where, you know, I'm choosing this cross section. This is where I would plan to have animals. This is how I would lay out shelters, water, etc. Then that's fine. That's totally justifiable. What I wouldn't do, I guess, is, see, I'm going to say I wouldn't do a cross section through the existing building area and pretend they're not there, like just not include them on the design, because you don't really know until you remove those buildings what's going to turn up, or how that's going to behave. On the other hand, that could be part of your storytelling, is like, all these buildings are going to be gone. I'm going to model that cross section, but I'll go with what you tell me. Like, you pick your cross section, and then I'll go from there, and that's going to be fine. But guys always get me like, oh, we're going to do this. Oh, but then there's this other case, and it's all fine. It's all like, it's kind of a creative project, and there's not a lot of like right and wrong answers. It's really like, tell me, you know, do this, do it to the best of your ability, you know, check as many boxes as you can, tell me if you're deviating and why you're deviating, and that's fine, and I'll go with that.
Okay.
Oh, okay, Victoria, I'm just seeing your question. It's fine as a sidebar question. Has anyone found a large but thin rainwater, gray water tank in your journey? I'm thinking something that could fit in a narrow side yard. Yes, there is a company, and I think they're called Thin Tanks.
Ooh.
Yes, it's literally called Thin Tanks. They're Australian.
Okay.
But
the client rainwater conversations continue, and we've gotten to a point. It's like, if we can hide it, let's do it. And
yeah,
particularly the places we can hide it are in these like really thin little alleyways. Yeah, that looks great. Okay, thank you so much. I'll dive into that a little bit more.
Yeah, they are based in Australia, but you may find a distributor, and I can look around. I can ask in the Librarians group too.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Susan.
The other thing I was thinking of you because I came across copper gutters.
Woohoo! Also,
yeah. Oh, okay. They're all over the place now.
Yeah.
So if you just Google.
Great.
Yeah.
Gutter That's a great idea too. Yeah. That would look great with his existing tile work too.
That's what I was thinking. I was like, oh, these would look really cool, and especially like when they age and they get that patina, they'd be a lot nicer. So
yeah, and his all of his trim is that sort of that same patina color. That
right.
Copper. Great. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, there you go. No problem. All right, what else do we have? Oh, when you're doing, I'm sure you'll notice this, but when you're doing your cross sections, there's these like pardon me, but grids you can steal, just steal the graphic and then lay it over top instead of having to go online and look and download and everything. They've provided a few for you to work with there. Okay. There's a cross section for a very urban site, an apartment, a cross section of a balcony. Well, I covered everything that I wanted to share with you guys. Oh, hi, Mark's little guy, little one. Oh, we'll go to this one. I didn't mention this. This is nice because the examples actually really closely follow the template. Just stick to the template. Just do it basic. Fill that in. You know, and again, like just keep in mind that this whole section is worth 4 points. So do not kill yourselves in getting it. The other thing is this local food chain. Pick your creatures and fill in the blanks and move on. Like, I know people that have really wrapped themselves up trying to decide what species of fungi they're going to choose to put into their food chain. And I'm like, doesn't matter. Put fungi, or pick a species, pick a common species that and use it as an example. Get your Latin name in there and then just like, I move on, because they're all serving like similar roles. But the idea is that really like, you have an idea of like what's eating what. So it's very, there's food webs. I'm a little bothered by the fact that they're using food chain instead of food webs, because there's really no chain that I know of, like, because there's all, there's 10 things eating one particular like producer. And so just pick an example for each one and move on.
And Susan, is this just from a design perspective, just to show competency, and not in the course, but in terms of I mean, obviously this is such a small portion of the much larger picture. So it's just this is included in a portfolio to basically say to a client, I'm thinking about this.
Yeah. And an example of like a highly relevant, like, for instance, in some like the oak woodland, you know, you might have like that there's, you know, there's, I want to see if this, I want to make sure this is going to be a good example, but, or in a grassland, you know, you've got a grass species, you've got something eating it, you know, or an insect, and then, so you know, like what that local ecology is looking like.
Yeah.
It
almost seems like it would serve, it could be more of a utility if you create this after there's more of a design present, so that you could include some design elements back into this survey and highlight it there. And that way, sort of telling the client, look, these are things that I'm introducing because these are, you know, these are essential in some way. And that's why they're, you know, going to be part of the design. But here we're doing that first just to kind of set that up. But maybe in practicality, you would do that later on.
Yeah, and it's kind of I don't want to say it's arbitrary, but it's, you know, it's kind of a chicken and egg, right? Because if you're saying like, you know, here's the site, and you want to look at like what the native ecology, you know, the native ecological webs would look like, then you're drawing it out here, and then you know what you're trying to work towards for your design, right? Whereas if you design first and then work backwards, then you might lose some of that. So it's, I could see a clear argument for either way. So, and the other thing is that I don't know, you know, if you haven't gone through the entire template, I would recommend at some point you to just scan through there and see what's kind of coming up, because there is, you know, the plant system design. It sounds like you have, but then your actual concept plan like pulls together a lot of these pieces, like, you know, there's your existing base map, you know, your proposed map, main goals, you know, so you're kind of going back through the whole course and picking up pieces that you found were highly relevant and that you learned along the way. Like, you know, for some people, this, I think for a lot of folks, this, this ecology survey is like, it's so basic as to be almost elementary, but you'd also be surprised at like the number of people that haven't considered this on their site, or they're new to the site. And so they're really like gathering that information. And part of it is finding out where to gather that information in the first place. So like, you know, here you might be going to like California Rare Plant Database, California like Fish and Game websites, and to find that information. And some of it is just like, it's not even so much of what the information is that you find, it's figuring out where you would find it. So.
And so for the local ecology survey, are we kind of, how micro do you want us to be with it? Like, if should we prioritize organisms that we've actually seen on our sites, or should we instead kind of zoom out a little bit and think more about what should be around our site if it were balanced? And I'm just thinking, like, I'm a very urban environment, so like, yes, we're seeing some things that should be there, but we're also seeing some things that are sort of out of balance because it's an urban environment. So
yeah, I mean, it's another one. You could strike either way. You could do two. You could copy this, right? You could do like an urban food chain and a, you know, native or like past ecology food chain, or food web or food chain, right, here. I would not use like ubiquitous species like raccoons, for instance, right? I mean, which you could say are part of the urban ecology, you know, or coyote. I mean, coyotes are a little harder because they are actually part of like our native food. You know, it's like, it kind of gets into this like sticky zone, but
and I was honestly, I'm thinking of like, so am I doing like a squash, a squirrel, and a coyote here, or like?
No, I would stay away from like really obviously like cultivated animals, right? But like, you know, you could pick like a lupin is a species, you know, a native species, and then there's like some native pollinators. There's some like native bird species, and then something that eats that those bird species. So I guess I prefer to see like, I think I prefer, and I think it's more useful to see what like the native species are,
Yeah.
And again, it's like a pick one and go with it, because you're going to lupin, you're going to have dozens of potentially like different insects pollinating on it or using it or eating it or whatever. So pick one, pick something that eats that insect.
Yeah, it's sort of striving for that balance. Like this, you know, this is what our area would look like if it were balanced, and then, you know, maybe that can be incorporated some of those native plants, or
right,
you know, we can use that to attract more balance into the site.
Yeah,
okay.
And if you think about what you might see in like a local, what do we call them here? Like a local outdoor space.
A preserve or a
preserve or something. Okay. Like, you know, if you went into, well, Los Padres would be too far, but like, you know, if you went into like a natural area around where you are, there's not like a city park or something.
Right. Even
what kind of change did you see?
Yeah. Okay, great. Thank you.
Yep, you're welcome. And keep in mind when you're looking at like bacteria, we know like less than 1% of bacteria species, and it's like even that is in the millions. So pick one and move on. Like, don't worry too much about it, right? Like, you know, a couple major general, maybe like lactobacillus or like a nitrobacter or something, because they have like they do, those groups have important ecological relevance, but don't spend a lot of time on worrying about if you got the right one, or a good enough one, or like something that stands out. So okay. All right. Oh, hi, Damien. You're here. You kind of snuck in there. I didn't see you. Okay, I didn't see you come in. Cool. So I am marking, just to catch everybody up, I am marking today. I've got a bunch of assignments open, a bunch of speed grader, and I apologize, I'm running behind. I feel like you guys hear a lot about this. But yeah, I am catching up on marking today and tomorrow. Might be today and tomorrow. So we kind of got nailed by the childcare shortage the last 6 weeks. So yeah, anyway, if you know, you know. My apologies. The other thing,
we had talked a little bit. If you're like me, I'm a little behind on this last assignment. If I just kind of let you know when I get that finished, is that okay? Like I won't be able to get up there today because I just need to do the water and the weighing test. Okay.
Yeah, that's how. So I'll tell you what my process is I go into the discussion, I open up everybody that says like, here's my assignment, or here's the link to my assignment. In that same discussion, I can open up your speed grader. So right now I've got like Travin, Bump, Trinkle, Emily J, and Tapia open, because I know I marked Fox and Booker already. So, and this is why I ask you to put your last names in the title of the presentation, because it's so much easier for me to look at the tabs. And then I've got your speed grader open, and I just go and I keep Zoom open, and I can turn the video off as I go, as I mark through one with your feedback. So if I get to yours and I'm going through it and I'm like, okay, this looks good, mark. Oh, it looks like there's a lot of yellow. Oh, it looks like you haven't even started the slide. I just shut it down, and I usually make a remark like, okay, I see you're working on this. I'll come back to it. So then I've made a note that I've, done there. I usually make a note in like my own kind of project management stuff, and I'll just come back to it. The biggest issue for you is that when I come back to it might be like next Monday, because like Monday is my, usually, except when I have a board meeting, set in stone working day. So then I try to get it back in like Wednesday and Thursday, but if I don't, it's often, might be Saturday noon, but it's usually Monday. So that's the main thing with submitting late, is you might get your feedback late. So it's no problem if you drop it in late. Just don't get too far behind, because it gets harder and harder to catch up. So, and there's no late penalty like marks wise or anything, so you don't need to be concerned about that. The other thing is that I've been talking with mostly from the other cohort. I've got a few people from previous ones that are wanting to do like kind of an open season office hour, and it's only for my students. So it'll only be from, you know, California, a couple from Texas, Mexico, Arizona. And I think it'll probably be like $20 or $25 a month. And it's basically a bi-weekly open season call. The funny thing is when I've set these things up in the past, almost nobody shows up on a regular basis. So it's like, you kind of get one-on-one consulting for like $20 a month. It's like, it's a pretty sweet deal. And then I can give you some options for like a full one-on-one, like we're looking at something specific consult. I don't know how much that's going to be, but like it's a 1-year discount code for a year after you've graduated. So if that's something that you think might interest you, keep it in mind, because I'll probably for you guys, because you've heard so many like, oh, I'm really sorry, I'm really behind on marking, oh, I'm really sorry, I'm going to give you like 3 months free or something to comp you, because it's been a little bit of a mess. And I apologize for that. But just keep that in mind if you're thinking like what you're going to do after the course. There's going to be some options for support if you want that. So, okay. Do we have any other questions? Damien, did you have any questions? Are you here? No. Okay.
I just want to bring an idea, and this is not at all fully fledged, and I think it sort of came up at some point earlier on. But I would still be interested if folks are around, and I'm not sure around, you know, for what specific reason, but it would be nice to get together if anyone is interested, especially if there's something more hands-on. I mean, we've been talking about this virtually. But if there's an opportunity to maybe engage with something, maybe like a permaculture site tour of some kind, or something that that might kind of spark our imagination, a chance to like meet one another, I would be very down to do that if it, you know, calendar wise, if it works out. So I'll just throw that out there. I don't know what it might look like, but
yeah,
you guys are pretty close too, I think. Victorian. Yeah. I think it's a great idea. There's so much that comes up in person that we don't necessarily get here. So I don't know how much of that I can swing, but I'd be happy to support it.
Yeah, if you know of other things that people have done and it was like really effective,
sure.
That would be great to know about.
Okay. Is there a farm? I know you've showed some stuff in like Camarillo, but is there like a really good place in Southern California? I don't know where. It sounds like most people are in the LA area. But is there like any farm, you know, that does, you know, tours or something, and then maybe?
You know, I know who to reach out to. I'll talk to Ecology Artisans, and they're in Encinitas. They would be, they and Daniel Aaron Francis, who was in Riverside, and I think he's moved now, but he started Riverside Permaculture. And he was pretty active in, but I don't know if he was only doing like private consults and installs and stuff. But I'll ask around. I don't know of anything like Eric Olson's Permaculture Skills Center up in Petaluma Petaluma or Sebastopol is the only site that I know of that's really dedicated to like, we are practicing and teaching permaculture. In terms of like farm design, I think plenty are sort of like employing principles, but not, not anything that's really like specifically built out with the purpose of education.
Yeah, like I know Fruitstitute does a lot of like education stuff.
Okay.
But it's not necessarily like I don't know that their goal is strictly like a permaculture design. It's more to get people interested in having like backyard orchards and things.
Right.
But there's a lot to learn there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Do they have their own space? I know that they're all over.
Yeah.
Do they have a site?
I know that they do tours at one of their locations. Because they had a Master Gardener event there.
Is that like at Highland Park or in?
Good question. I'll look into that.
Because they're cool. Yeah, I know a little bit about them, but it is all about sort of backyard orchard. But you're right. They probably do some other things too.
I know they do events and stuff. Like I've seen them. I've seen them like post about, and you're right. The events might move location, from event to event, but yeah, I'm not seeing like an actual. Yeah,
I think it's somebody's backyard. Yeah.
Right. This one was in Mount Washington. This one was in. So it looks like it's all kind of like Highland Park.
The closest I would say to be like it's actually a farm setting and not a backyard.
Yeah.
Installation. Would be Apricot Lane Farms here in Moore Park. And they're pretty awesome. They're extensive. You also have to walk into it with an awareness that they were bankrolled. Like they had money to work with.
Yeah.
And support. And they had a documentary and a film crew, and they were like in with Oprah. And it's like kind of like permaculture fairyland. Like,
is that the biggest little farm?
The biggest little farm, yeah. And there's actually been a lot of, I think, very like well justified criticism of how much water they use. Yeah, so it needs to be taken with a grain of salt, but it is a pretty inspiring project, and I think a lot of what they've done they probably could have done with less water in a different way. It was like it could have been managed a little bit differently.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's definitely inspiring, and their vermicomposting setup is to die for. It's incredible. They've got like this vortexer and like a full barn scale vermicompost set up, and
that sounds great. I mean, even to go there with sort of the understanding that is, this high priced ideal, and then to kind of look at it from the lens of what can be done differently or more economically would be really fascinating.
Yeah.
And maybe even get their insights about it, if they're willing to talk about it.
Yeah, and they're very nice people. They've got a lot going on, but they're really into sharing what they're doing there. So, let's see. Oh, okay, I think. Oh, Emily's gone. Okay, she was just asking us to share the recording. So.
I mean, we have to keep in mind that there are only just a few of us here, that have been active. I don't know how many people would want to do it, but how many people are actually in the section, Susan? It's
in like, this site, like in
your
it's
students? More like 15.
It's about 15, yeah.
Okay. There's more than just us. Okay.
Oh yeah. There's always like a small handful that consistently shows up to office hour calls. I lost a few. Oh yeah, I lost AJ. That was a bummer. Yeah, so about 15.
Yeah.
So I'm a little bit bummed because there's a number of students that were doing really well and then just kind of dropped off. I'm not sure why. I reached out to them before the break and I was like, hey, it's a good time to catch up if you need extra support. But
yeah, I understand what you were saying early on about, like, I imagine if you fall behind by more than a couple of weeks, it becomes really intimidating to to
pick it up again.
Yeah. Yeah.
One of the students actually was he was a re-enrollment from not my last section, but the section before. So I was really excited to see him again because he was like, oh, he was doing good work. He just got, he kind of got steamrolled by life, and that happens. That's fine. And so I was happy to see him come back, but then he was out again. Like, he's actually taken out a speed grader. So I'm assuming he like formally dropped out or formally, so whatever. I mean, think people have things that come up, and I guess I probably shouldn't share everybody's information. Yeah, so, and that's partly part of the reason why I like keeping a small cohort. Like, I think I've told them I'll do like 15 to 30, I'll take like 15 to 30 students. Javin's a machine. He's like up to like 50 students at a time. And I'm just like, no, no, thank you. I mean, he's been doing this a lot longer. I mean, he's a wonderful friend and a good mentor of mine, but he's, yeah. I'm not into taking on 50 students right now. So
he seems very much like a process person. Like, he's got his system, and then he just, bang, 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 bang.
He also doesn't have small children.
Yeah. Yes,
he's very systems oriented, and he does not have small children. So I'm like, yeah, I could probably do it too.
Yeah.
But yeah, I like having a smaller, like more intimate group, more support. So
I think we appreciate that too. Okay. I mean, also myself.
There's trade-offs, right? Because it's nice for you guys to have more contact with other groups, and I'm not sure why. This is the one thing I don't really like, is like, I don't like how there's not really good ways for students like to be able to connect with one another across the course. So I don't know. There is a WhatsApp group, but it's really not very active. So I don't even really, I mean, you could, I have to get the share link because I'm not in there as like as an admin. I was just invited into it. So I need to get the share link, I think probably from Javin, to invite you guys in there. But like almost nothing has happened. There was like a little flurry of activity with the East Palestine spill. And then it was just people asking about microfiltration ideas and phyto remediation. I'm like, sure, here's some links. And then it's, so.
Yeah, but I like, Victoria, that you're asking about, like the, water catchment and the different barrels and things like that. It's nice to have like a sounding board. And obviously, Susan, so much, but also just to get other people's experience is really helpful to have that, that opportunity.
Yeah. Yeah, collegialism is important. All right. Well, thanks for showing up, everybody. Hopefully we're all like back on schedule now until the end. So
thanks for your time.
All right. Have a great week, guys.
Thanks very much.
Good luck. Later.
Bye.